The light is an experience that we read about in Scripture many times, we hear about in the lives of saints, and some of us see it, others do not. When you see it, you should understand that it has a direction. It isn't something to be enjoyed just passively. You should concentrate on it and concentrate in the center of whatever light you see. It is a beacon. It's a guide light. It should show you the way to go. The more you concentrate on the center of that light, which will be here, the more you will find yourself being drawn into it. That light will redeem you from the darkness of delusion. However, darkness is not just a metaphor. It's an actual reality. Now, what's that? Okay, thank you. I just want this. That's the spirit. Thank you. My throat's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. If you don't see light, don't feel badly about it. You know, people can even be highly advanced and not see the light. Seeing the light is not the criterion in itself of spiritual development. Dr. Lewis told about a woman who came to their center in Massachusetts in the early years. And this woman, the very first meeting, she saw the spirit of the 1,000-petaled lotus. She saw through the walls of the room. She was bathed in this light and saw that light is the reality of everything physical. She never came back. It was too easy. It isn't your experiences that determine how advanced you are. It's your determination. It's the focus of your energy and that continuous striving from within that directs you to it. So don't feel that, well, somebody's got these visions, oh, he must be great. Or somebody doesn't, he must be nowhere. But see the sincerity. See the purity of heart. See your own purity of heart, because that determines everything on the path. Now, we tend to think that, well, I don't say we, because we, being in the spiritual teaching, do believe these things. But worldly people tend to think that this is just, well, it's just not possible. I remember how foolish I was in my early years, writing to my parents and trying to convert them to this path and talking about this light and telling them I'd seen this light and it's real, as if I was naive enough to think that they would take my word for it. Obviously, all they did was sort of think, well, the poor fellow, he's lost his reason. Understandable, too. We have to realize that the truth is something that you grow into slowly, and it cannot be necessarily brought down to an actual mathematical formula. The more you get into the spiritual teachings, you find not that they're illogical, but they certainly transcend logic. They don't seem to fit the picture that you want to make of things, because we've come up from a dark age of materialism. We've been brought up to think that everything is sort of mechanical. As some scientists, physicists said in the last century, if you can't show me a model of the universe, I can't accept it. He wanted something mechanical. But how do you make a mechanical model of a universe in which light is, everything is relative, light is both a particle and a wave? Again and again we find in reading the discoveries, especially in physics in recent years, it blows the mind. I think it's blown their minds too. I don't think they really know what they're talking about anymore. But the beautiful thing is that they more or less cheerfully admit it. You can't reduce it to logic. One of the very interesting things in this whole scheme of things is the whole yoga theory of Sri Yukteswar, which is not a theory, It was an explanation of what he called a fact. And it was very interesting. If you approach it, concentrate on it from one point of view, what you see is that yes, everything that fits what ought to be Dwapara Yuga fits our present situation. Dwapara Yuga is a time when people, according to the classic explanation for the cycles of time, is a time when the human race enters into an understanding of the universe as not material but energy. And in this century, I should say the last century now, just a century ago, 1905, they found that matter is energy. That energy is the underlying reality of what seems to us so solid. It isn't even little tiny particles of solid matter. That too was a staggering enough discovery. The fact that, well, looking at outer space, you look at the closest star to us is 4 light years away. Well, light travels at 186,000 miles a second. The sun is 93 minutes away for the light to get from the sun to here. No, is it 93 million miles, 8 minutes? And 8 minutes from the sun, 4 light years. That's an extraordinary distance. That's the nearest sun to us outside our own sun. And this universe is much more space than matter. But the atoms in our body are relatively distant from one another. It's inconceivable. There's much more space in your body than there is matter. Yet you push and it resists. Something's there. It's vibration. It won't let you through because the vibration's different. It's an inconceivable reality that we live in. And every decade or so, science comes up with some new discovery and says that, oh, everything's really not the way we thought, it's this way. Then it's going to go on like that because you cannot fathom this universe. It's beyond human fathoming. Well, anyway, Sri Yukteswar's explanation, he said that in exactly 1899, or rounded it out, he rounded it to 1900, we entered the full Dwapara Yuga. There was a Shandhya, as they called it, a sort of a transitional phase of 200 years. And now we're in Dwapara proper, you might say. And the discoveries of this century, I mean, you look at the things that have come up in just the years of my life. When I was a boy, I told you a few days ago that a teacher of mine in England told me that all the stars we see are really part of one galaxy. They didn't even use the word galaxy in those days. And that there are perhaps 2 or 3 other island universes like this one. 2 or 3. Now we know that there are some 100 billion. And who knows, who's counting? It's just beyond the ability to count. Back in about 1949, some expert in computer technology in some magazine like Popular Science, sort of with a gasp of amazement, said that someday computers may be small enough to weigh only 1 ton. Back in, I think, 1977, the president of IBM said that, well, they'll never be so small that you can use them in the home. Well, we see things altogether different today, and they keep on getting different. If you think that this is only the beginning of Dwapara, it makes you just wonder what they're going to pull out of their hats later on. Sri Yukteswar, when he wrote his book, The Holy Science, they didn't know things that he said were so. He said everything is light, everything is energy. They didn't know that for another 11 years. There were several other things he said. He said that the center of our galaxy, we're moving toward the center of our galaxy. Well, do you know that toward the end of the 19th century, astronomers still thought that the sun is the center of the universe? once they realized that it probably wasn't, they still had no idea where the center of the universe is, had no idea that we were moving, had no idea where we were moving, and it's only much more recently that they've discovered that indeed the center is right out there somewhere in the constellation of Sagittarius. And yes, we are moving, and yes, we are moving in a general direction. It's not a beeline, it's sort of an ellipse toward that center. Now, these are things that he said that weren't known at that time. There were other things that he said that aren't known now, and that people today wonder about still. Because he said, for example, that the precession of the equinoxes is something that depends on our movement around what he called a dual. Now, there's no knowledge of any dual. Vyasa says that they've done a great deal of exploration, and they've covered pretty well 60% of the skies so far. There's nothing that could pass for a dual. 40% is left. Maybe they'll find it, or maybe it'll be in another dimension. Who knows? But I say that if the system works, then pick up the details later, because everything he did say specifically that's been discovered has been verified. No one has been able to say that there isn't a dual. In fact, in newspaper articles a few years ago, there were astronomers were saying, well, maybe we have a dual. And they advanced reasons why there could be, and they've explored those possibilities, decided it isn't so. Well, this is the story of science, and it's not surprising. But it could be, indeed, that someday they'll find that there is some sort of dual. Science, astronomers have figured out mathematically exactly the reason for the precession of the equinoxes, which is sort of like a top. You know, when a top is not spinning fast, it begins to go like this. So the Earth is sort of like that, and as it wobbles, one wob, you might say, covers one total circle of the equinox. And that, dash this throat. Peter, I am getting better. I reassure you. One wobble, according to astronomy, takes something like 25,000 and several hundred years, different from Sri Yukteswar's 24,000 years. Well, maybe the 24 is rounded out. Maybe the equinox goes more quickly and more slowly, quite possible. But Sri Yukteswar said that it really is due to our movement relative to the galaxies. Now, is this a simple coincidence? It could be, who knows? Another thing that he pointed out, Vyasa did, and it's very interesting to read his notes on this, his classes. Many of you have had the opportunity to attend them. I could only read them. But he points out, for example, that the amount of distance that we cover in rotating around any dual in 12,000 years, moving 12,000 years at the rate that we're doing to reach the closest point to the center of our galaxy is really not significant. The center of our galaxy is some 27,000 light years away from here. The nearest star, 4 light years, 27,000 light years. The little bit that we can cover moving as we do in 12,000 years is really not significant. But that's not the whole explanation. You see, it's a matter of when you get more open to something, like what Master wrote in his poem Samadhi, called "Spotless is my mental sky, below, ahead, and high above." If there is something in the way, you'll get less of that ray than if you're right facing it. And so it could be relative to our dual, if there is such a thing, that we get more of those rays and less of those rays, even as we get more of the sunlight as the Earth turns, and then less and less of it as it turns us toward night again. These things are mechanical things, and I'm disposed to think that, just as we've found that the universe is not even mechanical, it's really composed of energy and light, so what we'll find in time is that the explanation for these things is far subtler than Sri Yukteswar even bothered to explain, for the simple reason that he knew we wouldn't understand it. However, the things that could be verified were already demonstrated. And we see, in fact, that we are coming up into an age of energy, an age of understanding energy, an age when, well, they say that in Dwapara Yuga, this is the old tradition in the ancient scriptures, that in Dwapara Yuga, mankind lives longer. Well, doctors claim the credit for that, but it's all coincidence. We live longer also because we live longer. There is something in nature that is causing it to happen, whether through medicine, whether through any other reason, it's causing us to happen. And it will continue to happen. You know, when I was a young man in India, I was ahead above everybody in the crowd. Now I'm short. In just a short time, they say that in Dwapara Yuga, people grow taller. Many things change. All of them, the symptoms are all the same all over the world. They fit the test of Dwapara Yuga, which is what I'm trying to say. They fit the test of whether we're in Dwapara Yuga or not. Now, one test that they don't seem to fit, I should say, is that mankind is supposed to become more enlightened. What we see instead, that man is getting more and more confused. That's not really confusion either. What it is that man is breaking away from his old rigid bindings, bonds, chains, and breaking out into the free and says, "Whee, I'm free." And it won't take him long to realize, well, that isn't freedom at all. And he'll begin to, people will return to moral values. People will return to spiritual values. They're just reveling in what they imagine is a freedom they don't really have. It's going to change. It cannot but, because there's only so far you can go in that direction. Finally, sooner or later, you're going to snap back to an understanding of the fact that you, for example, Sartre said you're radically free, right? Well, try to eat nails. Doesn't work. I don't think you'll be around the next day to tell us if it worked, but we'll be able to tell you, or your soul. It doesn't work. There are rules governing the body. There are rules governing the emotions. The more you grab from other people, the more you suffer. The more you share with other people, the more fulfilled you are. There are rules governing your spiritual body. As your energy rises, you come closer and closer to a state of heavenly bliss. As the energy descends, you feel more and more pain in your own self. This is a universal fact. Every scripture in the world speaks, or every nation and culture in the world speaks of heaven as being up above and hell as being down below. Well, it isn't a matter of taste. It's not a matter of opinion, nor is it a matter of objective reality, because the people in Australia can say that what's up for them is heaven, but that's down for us. So are they demonic? No. It really relates to your own self, and so much of spiritual teaching does relate to yourself. The more your energy comes up to your grand central sun of your galaxy, the more you find yourself enlightened. And so every scripture also says that, and every human being says when a person feels good, he says, I feel up, I feel high, I feel like soaring. Or when he feels unhappy, he says, I feel low, I feel down, I feel in the dumps. Every language has the same expression because it's a universal experience. Today is Mother's Day. It's not in my recollection, it's not a big day, but it is to many people. It was sort of new when I came along. And my mother, I know, did not take it seriously. I'd call her and say, Happy Mother's Day. And she'd say, oh, is it that day again? Quite blasé on the subject. But I honor it not because of motherhood. For heaven's sake, half the human race is mothers. Half of them, or most of them, have children. And many of them are bad mothers, contrary to what Swami Shankara said. He said, bad sons there are many, but a bad mother there has never been. But you know why he said it? Divine Mother. He was talking of the Divine Mother, and we are bad sons of hers, yes, but she never lets us down. She never disappoints us. God is our mother, and that's why I honor the mother. Otherwise, well, we've all got something to do. And I hope I'm not offending anyone, because the fact that I love my mother makes me honor all mothers, yes. But the point is that that love should be for God above all. God is our mother. God is the love that is expressed to us through our mothers. And you know, that story of Shankaracharya was beautiful. He wanted to go off and become a renunciate. Well, let's face it, most mothers would not have approved. He was 6 years old. He wanted to leave home and hearth and go off and seek God who knows where, in the Himalayas or something. And she wouldn't let him go. Well, he was a faithful son, and so he wouldn't go against her will. However, he was also a very highly evolved son, and he went into a river, and a crocodile grabbed him. And he said, "Mother, either this crocodile will eat me, or you must let me go." He gave her a drastic choice. If you won't let me go to seek God, I will let this crocodile eat me. Well, what choice did she have? So she had to say, okay, you can go. And he, with his power, was able to escape from that crocodile. Now, again, a materialist would say, well, how? I mean, the crocodile's got him by the jaws, right? It's so simple. You look at the crocodile in the eye and it says, okay. I don't know how he did it. Doesn't matter to me. So I've seen too many things in my life, like Master crossing the Mexican border with a car full of mangoes. Well, you're not allowed to bring mangoes into California. And he came through and the customs official said nothing. The car was reeking with mangoes. And somebody said to Dr. Lewis later, well, how did that happen? Dr. Lewis said, I don't know. All I know is I saw this great blue light everywhere. So, whatever it was. But the thing is that when you live in God, you find that the rules change. And the more you live for God, the more the rules change. You'll see that a certain strange thing begins to happen in your life, that you begin to feel guided, you begin to know what you have to do, and you begin to feel a certain joy welling up in you. And when that joy diminishes, that's your guidance to say, well, no, better not. You'll find that if you follow it like a muscle, you use the muscle, it becomes strong. So you follow that intuition, it becomes clearer and clearer. Now you can define it as an inner light, but if you can't see the light, in any case, define it as a direction, that which lifts your consciousness upward, that which brings you toward the divine center of your own being, and you really are a galaxy in your own self. The more you do that, the more you will live in Satya Yoga, the more you will live in divine consciousness. And the more you get away from that and think that you can figure it all out yourself, the less you will find anything working for you. It doesn't work. How many people have thought, well, I got to get it together myself first, and then I'll seek God. And it just never comes together. It's always just one thing not quite there. It's sort of like that beautiful little legend of Krishna when he was a child, that the story goes that he used to like to steal the cheese from the kitchen, and his mother was working with the cheese and didn't want him interrupting her and didn't want her stealing the cheese, and so she decided to tie him to a bedpost. And she got a piece of long string strong enough to hold him and tied him, except that it wouldn't match. It was short by that much. So she went out and got another string and tied it to the first and It was much longer. Tied it, and again, just that much short. No matter how much string she got, it still remained just that much short. And she thought, my God, what's the matter? I understand. He's not just a child. He's the divine incarnation. And she said, Lord, please let me tie you up so I can get about and do my work. And he smiled, and suddenly she found she was able to tie him. Well, this is how God is, that if we leave him out of the picture, no matter what we do, we can't get it together. All the strings that we do, we invest, we speculate, we do this, we do that. Something always goes wrong. There's a story that Master told about a man who was advanced enough to be able to see an angel when he died. And the angel appeared to him at his death. And he said, have you done everything? Do you have any more desires? And the man said, well, yeah, actually, I do have a desire. I'd like to have a healthy body. I haven't been all that well. I've been sickly all my life. If I have to be reborn, let me be reborn strong. So he came back strong as a sando, but he was poor, and he couldn't feed this big body. And he was starving to death all the time, hungry. And finally, as he was lying on his deathbed, and the angel appeared, and the angel said, well, is there anything else? He said, yeah, give me a strong body, but make me also rich so I can feed myself properly. So the next life, he was born wealthy and strong, and everybody else said, what a fortunate man this is. But he didn't have a wife, and he was lonely. And he thought when he was dying, and the angel appeared to him, and he said, what do you want now? He said, please give me a wife. And fine, he said, she gave him a wife. So his next life, he was strong and wealthy and healthy and everything, and he had a wife. Trouble was, she was a termagant, a shrew, just nagged the life out of him. So when he was on his deathbed, probably nagged to death. Master said, people think women are weak. Or a woman with a 6-inch tongue can kill a man 6 feet tall. And so he said, Lord, give me wealth, health, and a beautiful wife, and a gentle wife, and a wife who's sweet-natured. And so the angel said, okay. So he came back, and he got all these things. And the trouble was, the wife died after a year. And he spent his life worshiping at the shrine of this beautiful, adored wife. And he worshipped her gloves, and he worshipped her scarf. And as he was dying of loneliness, the angel came and said, what now? And he said, well, Lord, okay, I've got it now. I've got it, okay? I want a strong body. I want to be wealthy. I want to have a beautiful wife who lives a long time. Anything else? No, I think that's everything. So he got them all. And this beautiful wife who lived a long time. The trouble is, she lived too long. And he began to get in his old age the fancies for his young secretary. And he ran off with her. She took all his money, left him high and dry. He had no health, no wealth, no wife, nothing. And he was dying. And the angel came and said, what now? And the man said, nothing doing, Lord. I understand. There's a trick in everything. There's a catch in everything. Sort of a catch-22. He didn't use that word. He said, I only want God. Well, that's the story of our incarnations. It's not necessarily defined in those particular terms, but just think of all the possible delusions that man not only can get into, but does get into. We can go forever until we realize that the only thing we want, and the beautiful thing is that God is in all the things that we think we want. That's the wonderful thing about this book, The Science of Religion, that everything that you're looking for bliss and think that it's bliss when you're getting a beautiful ice cream soda or a beautiful whatever, And you think it's going to do it and it doesn't. And then you think something else will do it. And like a bloodhound, you're baying down this trail, but all you find at the end is a corpse. Well, if you really understand that behind that anticipated pleasure, there is bliss. You've been looking for that bliss all the time. Like that wonderful story of a man in a family, a farmer in the Near East, I think it was, who farmed a very poor farm, just eked out a bare existence with his family and children. When somebody came by and told him that if you could go down deep into the earth, you might find a diamond which would solve all your problems. You'd have all the money you've ever wanted. And he thought, well, that's for me. And he left his family and went looking for this diamond. Never found it, died a pauper in Portugal. Meanwhile, his little girl was playing with a ball in the backyard, and the ball fell into the well. And in trying to reach the bottom of the well, she pulled out something shiny. It was pretty. She used to like to play with it. Then another traveler came by and said, hey, this is a diamond. And it turned out the man had been sitting on one of the most valuable diamond mines in the world. And he went everywhere else looking for it, looking for that wealth that he had sitting right in his own backyard. This is the story of man. We think that it's there. It's always been right here. The direction you need to seek that redeeming light is not outward, it's inward. When you can bring your energy upward, when you can bring it to the point between the eyebrows, and always visualize that light, even if you don't see it, it will come in its own time. Master said, meditate on the light behind the darkness. Try, even if you don't see light, concentrate on the center of that darkness. Bit by bit, you'll begin to see a sort of a dim violet island in the middle of that darkness. That will be the beginning of the shaping of the spiritual eye. And as you concentrate more and more calmly, you will find that that light becomes stronger and stronger until it becomes this beautiful golden circle with a blue field inside it and a 5 white pointed star. The more you follow that star to the cradle of Christ consciousness, the more you will discover, and in time you will discover, your own birth in the Christ. That is what the spiritual path is. That is the redeeming light. And in the matter of the yugas, fascinating subject, but I suspect that they'll find that perhaps in subtle ways that Sri Yukteswar couldn't even explain completely, because we're not at that point yet in our own evolution. If you had told people 4 centuries ago that matter doesn't exist, they would have laughed at you. If you had told them that energy is the basis of everything, they'd have laughed at you. If you told the scientists today that consciousness is the reality behind energy, some of them wouldn't laugh, but most would. We're just not there yet. But maybe we'll find out that there's a coincidence between the turning of this top of the world and the movement of the sun through the around our dual. Who knows? Perhaps we'll find that a dual does exist. I certainly don't doubt it, but it doesn't matter to me, because the important question that science also asks is, and this is the question I've asked in my book, Hope for a Better World, which I can't find. Did I leave it in the car?
No, you put it in the library.
Oh, okay. Sorry for breaking the subject. I've mentioned in my book that, what did I mention in my book? Huh?
Does it work? Does it work?
Yeah, does it work? Thank you. That's the question I've asked in that book. Does it work? We have to ask that. In the whole Yuga theory, the one operative function is it does work. Everything points to the fact that man is beginning to evolve. everything also points to a dismal alternative, that if the traditional idea in India, which is that we're at the very beginning, in the first 2,000 years or so, of a descending Kali Yuga that's going to last a total of 432,000 years, if things are going to keep getting on worse and worse and worse, I can't imagine man being around anymore. I can imagine us becoming monkeys and even worms. It doesn't make sense. People are so dark even now. I'd hate to think of them becoming darker. But if you look back, look at the pleasure people used to take in the so-called games in the Colosseum in Rome. You know, even a man like St. Augustine, however you pronounce it, who was a saint, but he had a terrible temptation to go and see those people being slaughtered. They were in their state of consciousness, generally speaking, was so gross that it's hard to imagine now. Some people like bullfights. Most people, I think, in this country would just be horrified even by that. We don't find pleasure in slaughter. Some people still do, but it's just not the direction of the human race is toward compassion, even toward animals. The direction of the human race is toward enlightenment, toward greater concern for our fellow beings. Even in my lifetime, I've been amazed to see how this has been changing radically from one generation to the next. We are in an age that's taking us upward toward greater spiritual advancement, greater spiritual awareness. It will continue. I asked Master once, will the people who are here in Kali Yuga be around in Satya Yuga? Will they evolve along with the earth? He said, no. Take that to heart. You go where you are, where you belong. When you are Kali Yuga consciousness, you go to other planets. He said, there are many planets. You go to those that are compatible with who you are. He also said, and this is even more scary, he said, otherwise you'd find out too soon. In other words, there's something in the whole scheme of things that on the one hand tries to draw you toward God, on the other hand tries to push you away. And you're the one who has to make up your mind which direction you want to go. But if you get in tune with that upward flow, it conspires to pull you up with it. You will come back in that case. You will be born in higher ages. On the other hand, you may not have to be born at all, because you may be out of it altogether. A great blessing to be considered is this, that spiritual progress is much greater during a dark age, if you make the effort, than it is during a high age, a light age, when you don't feel the incentive to make the effort. So actually, the struggles that we have to go through now are far more conducive to our spiritual advancement than they will be in a higher age. Take heart from that one. But remember, ultimately, it's not that you're going to be carried along by God's waves to the heights. Don't think, well, if I don't do it now, Dwapara Yuga is going up. Maybe if you're enough in tune, you'll keep going with it. If you aren't, you'll be like those surfers who don't know how to do it and fall instead of going along with the surf. Don't think about what's out there. Think about your own directions. Seek the light. Seek the inner light. Seek the inner joy. The more you love God, the more everything else will fit into place. It's a sort of like a puppet made with little sticks and strings. If you pick it up at the right point, the puppet falls into place and it becomes a man, or the shape of a man. If you pick it up anywhere else, it's just a jumble of sticks and strings. Let your life be directed by that one point. Either here or here is another subject. But that point, which is the central focus of light, that is what should lead you in every action. Everything you do, refer it back to that inner consciousness. Is that going to lead me upward, or is it taking me away? Does it bring me better peace or not? That's why my bottom line all these days that I've been on the path has been just one: my inner peace. If what I do brings me more peace, fine. If it doesn't, I simply won't do it. And maybe all the reason in the world why I should do it, I just don't do it. I think that's a safe guideline. Follow it. Okay.